My name is Stephen Weeks, and I'm the Christian Treasure Hunter. In this video, I'm going to reveal which state each of the 4 small boxes of Jon Collins-Black, There's Treasure Inside Treasure Hunt, have been hidden. I'm going to be boots on the ground for the Pokemon Trail and discuss how I got here and discuss some of the feedback I got after posting my Appalachian footpath box solve. And lastly, I'm going to discuss why I call this Let's Find Some Treasure, because I believe we're supposed to find all this treasure together. So let's get into it. The kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field. My name is Stephen Weeks, and I'm the Christian Treasure Hunter. Subscribe, like, follow, share. Let's find some treasure. Will you pray with me? Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory forever. Amen. Well, thank you for joining me. If you don't know, we're on a treasure hunt. Let me tell you how it all began with this video.
Imagine the thrill of finding a chest filled with millions of dollars worth of treasure. Hello, I'm Jon Collins-Black, and I hid millions of dollars worth of treasure in 5 chests across the country.
So let's jump right into it. Let me give you my predictions about where each of the 4 small boxes are. Drum roll, please. The Past and Future box, the Forrest Fenn box, the Lion's Share box, the Appalachian footpath box, and the Pokemon box. Now, I know this is a wild claim, and a lot of people will be very upset about this prediction, this theory, me saying this is the location of all of the boxes. Not only that, but I'm just going to go ahead and give it to you exactly what state I believe each of the 4 boxes are in. I believe the Pokemon box is in Maine. The Appalachian footpath box, as I did in my previous video, is in North Carolina. I believe the Past and Future box is in California, and the Forrest Fenn box is in New Mexico. Now let's get into exactly how I came to this conclusion. I'm one to believe that Jon Collins-Black is honorable and is going to do exactly what he said he was going to do. And so one of the things that really interests me about this particular book in general was the fact that in part 2, Jon Collins-Black makes the following statement. Each chapter is dedicated to one treasure box and how to go about finding it. As I had talked about in my prior video about the Appalachian footpath box, one of the things I had learned was that Jon Collins-Black was actually from Asheville, North Carolina, and knowing that the Appalachian Trail actually crosses North Carolina, it was possible that he may have left one of the treasure boxes not far from where he was actually from. And so one of the things I didn't realize is that this may also be a clue into helping find some of the other treasure boxes. Because here's what I found. Knowing that all the clues to find one of the small treasure boxes is within the chapter, here are the states that he discusses in each chapter. Now, there's a lot of ways I can break this down, but I wanted to try and discuss this in a way that kind of left little room for doubt. There's always room for doubt. And so I understand that. But how I came into believing that the Pokemon box is in Maine. As you go through the book and you get to the chapter on the Pokemon box, Jon Collins-Black goes on a 14-day vacation. This vacation begins in Statesville, North Carolina, where he lives, and goes to New Orleans, and then to Houston, Texas, then through the Ozarks, and then back to Statesville, North Carolina. He then says later in the chapter that because of all his precious memories along that trip, he decided it would be fitting to leave a treasure box not far from someplace he had visited along that journey. Now, just for a quick pause in between my story, as you can see right here, there are lots of lily pads in this water. Just want to make a note of that. I'll talk about that later on. Now, back to the story in New Orleans. One of the things that you notice is all of the things that are capitalized, the places in reference, there seems to be a couple patterns, some repeated patterns. And so I couldn't find a connection between all of them, but when you look at the repeated ones, I did find a connection I thought was interesting. New Orleans is repeated multiple times, along with 2 references to France, the Eiffel Tower and the French Quarter. And then there's 2 references to England, Eric's wardrobe and Alice's looking glass. And then I kept seeing a continual reference to new, even with the Empire State Building being in New York. And so it had me thinking about New England. You had New Orleans, you had England, New England. And then after doing a little digging, I realized there's a reference not only to New England, obviously in the Northeast, but to New France. This for me seemed to be a connection that would point somewhere in the Northeast. But then the biggest clue that led me to Portland, Maine was the sentence that followed this story. It goes, "It was almost 40 years later in July 2016 when Kimberly and I arrived for our overnight stay in Portland, Maine." And I thought to myself, wait, it was almost 40 years later? You're saying 40 years earlier you were in Portland, Maine? Then to top off the clue, he makes a picture reference that he took at the end of the trail where he hid the treasure box somewhere near the location. And in this image, someone pointed out that you see this image of Mewtwo. Mewtwo is a Pokemon. And he's a unique one because he's not a regular creature. He was man-made. And the interesting thing about his story is that he was man-made on this island, some type of island. And if you look at Acadia National Park, this park is actually an island in Maine. And it had me thinking about there's a connection between this image and the location of the box. And when I found this particular spot right here that you're looking at, and I'm gonna show you a picture that I took, I thought to myself, wait, could this be what this distorted image is? I remember when I first looked at the image, I thought there was a river or water, but I wonder if it was just shadows. And I wonder if there were some connections because I took the image and I thought, these things look similar. At least this one little part of this photo. But you tell me, what do you think? Could this be the distorted image that he's making a reference to? It's here at the Acadia National Park, where I found this clue and a few others that I'm going to discuss as I actually get to the beginning of the actual trail. I actually took you on a detour to a connecting trail in order to show you this area and the clues that I found. But further up, you'll see the actual beginning of the trail and some of the other connecting dots and confirmations that I feel that this is the location in which he hid the Pokemon box. Now, just to take a step back and take a look at some of the overarching things that I'm talking about in regards to all of the 4 Part 2 treasure boxes in Jon Collins-Black. Like I said, if you look at which states are referenced, you'll see that there's only a couple states referenced in each chapter. And I believe that the Appalachian footpath box is in North Carolina. And here in Maine, the Pokemon box you can find. Now, one of the things you'll notice is that I state that the Forrest Fenn box is located in New Mexico. Now, obviously, if you're paying attention to details, you'll see clearly that he actually does not reference the state of New Mexico in this chapter. Instead, he only references California and Santa Fe, Arizona. Now, if you actually take a look at where he does this, here's a really interesting thing. They told the story of a man named Forrest Fenn, an art collectibles dealer from Santa Fe, Arizona. Here's the thing. He's not from Arizona. Not only that, he's from Santa Fe, New Mexico, and he hid his treasure box somewhere in one of these 4 states. And this is exactly what Jon Collins-Black did. And he even updated his website to state that he hid it somewhere in one of these 4 states and not in the Yellowstone National Park, which some people were thinking. Now, here's something interesting. Forrest Fenn's house is actually for sale. And as you can see, it's located in New Mexico. Along with that, there's a video that the realtor put up about Forrest Fenn's house. And he does a complete walkthrough of the entire house. Now, he's actually hidden the link for this, and it's no longer easily findable on YouTube. But I'll share the link below. Now, as you can see, I'm just going to go through it again. I believe that I found all locations of the Part 2 treasure boxes. And I believe he gives very clear clues showing that the Appalachian footpath box is in North Carolina. The Pokemon box is in Maine, the Past and Future box is in California, and the Forrest Fenn box is in New Mexico. Now, I do believe I actually know the location of the lion's share box as well, but not sharing that just yet. That'll be for another video. Now, I still have much to talk about along the Pokemon Box Trail. As you know, when you get into the story of the Pokemon box, he goes through a long, kind of exaggerated story about doing the trail with one of the Pokemons and making this trek up the hike and all of that. And so I'll talk to you more as I get to the beginning of that trail and walk you through what I found and what I feel are some undeniable clues. Although I know a couple people will definitely deny my clues. Remembering that this is all about the kingdom of God, one of the things I wanted to do was just recall a scripture that kind of came to my heart when I was actually thinking about this trail and some of the experiences that I had while I was searching for this treasure. And it's in Matthew where Jesus says, he told his disciples, if anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake will find it. For what will it profit a man if he gains the whole world and forfeits his soul? Or what shall a man give in return for his soul? For the Son of Man is going to come with his angels in the glory of his Father. Then he will repay each person according to what he has done. Truly I say to you, there are some standing here who will not taste death until they see the Son of Man coming in his kingdom. Which can be found at Matthew 16:24-28. And I was reminded about this as one of the things I watched on one of my trips up there was this Netflix documentary called Golden Greed, The Hunt for Finn's Treasure. And it's a mini-series where you follow various families as they travel to search for Forrest Fenn's treasure and some of the heartbreaking and lives lost and families broken and just there's so many different stories, and it was sobering, and it made me want to not search for the treasure anymore. Like it was like a reminder that there's some things that are more important than finding the treasure. There's some things that are more important than that. And what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and lose his soul? So I just encourage you, I'm just going to take about 30 seconds in silence and just let you think about that question. So I want to go back to my first video on the Appalachian footpath box and my solve for that particular treasure. When I made the video, I actually didn't realize that when you make it available for kids to watch, it means the comments will be turned off. And so I changed that feature and I got locked out. And so I'll probably get more commentary now directly. But you can see my post and my video, and I got a lot of feedback, and mainly about the issue was I didn't find the box. And if you go to Jon Collins-Black website, as of right now, no one has found the box. Along with that, I think there's just some incentive for people who are searching for this treasure to actually not share their solves, because if you do, it helps eliminate a location and it gives you more clues to find the other locations. And so I think there may have been something created as a result of these multi-boxes, like finding the Pokemon box, and even the fact that I believe I found the location of all the boxes. And I think that that's one of the reasons why somebody may not come out and share that they found one of the boxes. And so let's get into this Pokemon Box Trail, okay? On the left is where you begin the actual trail for the Pokemon box. And the name of the trail is Dorr Mountains Trail. Now, when you look at the Dorr Mountains Trail and you think about that word Dorr, you can think of the word D-O-O-R, which is actually a reference he makes several times in his story back in Louisiana when he was a child. And he makes 6 references that I'm going to name out right here. Just as they had done when we arrived the evening before, the hotel glass doors opened all by themselves as I approached. And a few feet down the sidewalk, a door was open. He says, I walked right through him past the doorway as if I owned the joint myself. Excuse me, young man, the guy from the door suddenly appeared and interrupted. Then he continues, so you came in here all by yourself? The doorman asks. And then at the end, right about then, my parents poked their heads inside the door and saw me at the bar engaged in a conversation with 2 men. It was time to go. All of these references to Dorr had me thinking, wait, is he referencing this particular trail, the Dorr Mountain Trail? Clearly, there's a connection here. This has got to be a clue that this is the trail that Jon Collins-Black was referring to and leading us to find this box. And so you tell me, when you look at the clues, when you look at that story, what do you think? Is there a connection? Is this the clue that leads us to this trail in the Arcadia National Park to find this box? At least that's what I thought. And so as I came across this trail, I basically followed along the story and began to see connections. And so one of the connections that happens at the beginning of the story is he starts off saying, it was at this moment that I heard a loud noise. I could have sworn it sounded like my boss chief, but the Frokie pointing to a sign said that was unlikely. And we won't see any buffalo either, just so you know, he added. And I believe this is making a reference to no dogs allowed, because the boss chief is actually a reference to a dog canine. And as you can see, there are no dogs allowed on the ladder trail here at Dorr Mountain. And you'll see that there's a couple different ways you can actually go about starting this trail. I started in a different location because, like I said, I wanted to show you along that kind of body of water that there are lily pads located there. One of the things you notice when you're on this trail is that there are multiple difficulty levels to the trail. You can do the difficult trail, the moderate trail, or the easy trail. And I wasn't sure which one to do, but I remember reading that next sentence where he said he did a modicum of research. And modicum had me thinking about moderate. Now here's an overall map, and I didn't point out that place earlier, but here's where I started on my trail in this video earlier. And where the actual beginning of the trail, the Dorr Mountain Trail, is right here on the map in Acadia National Park. And again, you'll see that there's the ladder trail. And you'll understand more as I go along this trail, because this trail definitely felt like it was a ladder. And it was going up and up and up. And I kept wondering, man, does he even have a reference to going up and up and up in the book? And he didn't have one in the story. I mean, it talks about being on the 5th floor, but that's nothing in comparison to like the steps and the ladder that it took to go up this trail. As you can see, I'm taking these steps, and you're gonna see a couple times on this trail, I get tired. Anyways, you'll see that I made a list of things that I was going to be looking for along the trail. This list I came up with as I was reading along the story, and I was thinking to myself, okay, these are the things that I need to see in order to confirm that I'm on the right track. You know, one of the things you have to do in order to avoid confirmation bias is make sure that things are lining up. And so there's one of these things that became crystal clear, and you'll see it along the way. Some of these things I saw but didn't necessarily see. So, like, for example, one of the things that's at the beginning of the list is you're going to see a large oak tree. And I can't say I confirmed that I found the specific large oak tree he was referring to. Now, I do recall seeing these acorns are clearly signs of an oak tree, and I was like, okay, but I'm not sure which big oak tree he's referring to. I can't say I actually saw raccoons along the trail, which is one of the things that he says in this list. And so just wanted to point out that list. This is a list that I was kind of trying to find things, and I'll confirm a few of the things as I kind of come across them on the list. So first off, you see he's clearly talking about a Frokie that joins him on the trail, where he puts a lily pad on his book bag. And as you saw early on, I definitely saw lily pads in the water. But beyond this, I know that the dog reference, I believe, is to the sign that I already showed you. But a lot of these other references, I can't really say that they were along the trail. Even the idea that no buffalon, the raccoons, the cricketine, and all these other animals, I'm just going to cross them off as you see and just say that I wasn't able to find them. Now, obviously, there's tons of rocks. So, I mean, you could say definitely there's rocks on the path, but that's about the only other one on this list. And so I separated the list into the creatures that he refers to, at least majority of the creatures he refers to. There are a couple of creatures he refers to that I didn't add, like one is a reference to the hot air and dragon, like breath, that is referring to a particular Pokemon. But I really didn't understand what that meant either. So definitely a lot of the creatures reference, I can't put two and two together. So if somebody else can, or there's another better explanation, I definitely understand, but I wasn't able to find that connection. Now, I will say, obviously there is a chance that I was by water, and so maybe the fish Pokemon or the minnows by the water's edge are definitely some things that you can automatically say are prevalent there. I didn't mark that, but that's also something that is possible. Now let's take a look at the other half of this list. When you write down all the items that you're kind of looking for based on the story, here are what I came up with, again, that are not the creatures. All right, and let's begin. So starting with the local jazz bar and the local pet store, I found a couple examples of possible jazz bars that he could have been referring to. There are places and bars that show, based on their reviews and history, that they had live jazz music. All right. Now, one of them actually closed down sometime in between 2023 and 2025. Not exactly sure, but so there's a chance it could be this one, or it could be this other one that also is still available and had some notes about live jazz music. All right. Then you also had this local pet store. Now, the name of the area in general, people refer to it as Bar Harbor. And so this may be what he's referring to when he talked about getting that jar of flies for the Froakie. All right. And so I checked that one off. Next, you got modicum of research, which I obviously was speaking about at the beginning of the trail, choosing the moderate based on the definition of modicum. All right. Now, the large oak tree, I'm not sure. It could have been this tree over here, or I'm not sure which one's the oak tree. I know I saw acorns on the ground, but I couldn't actually determine which one was the tree. I'm not good at determining the trees, just like I did in my previous video where I said I found a dogwood tree and somebody said that no, that's a rhododendron tree. And I was like, oh, okay, well, either way, that still helps with the story connection. But nevertheless, the increasingly shaded, I'm not really sure if this fits. I checked it off because we have trees, but I was expecting more trees for increasingly shaded. You tell me. You'll see along the path if it gets increasingly shaded. But anyway, mysterious and hauntingly gorgeous. I mean, gorgeous is definitely the view, but I don't know about mysterious, so didn't really check that one off. But this next one, increasingly hemmed in. Now, I was wondering what this could mean, and I was thinking, oh, the narrow steps could mean that. But when I came to this part right here, now prepare yourselves, because I thought this is one of the biggest clues that I was on the right path, because this was very confusing to me when I was reading the story. But when you get to this point, you'll see. I mean, look at this. You have to squeeze through these rocks. Don't you feel a little hemmed in, even in this video? I mean, don't you? Like, that was a big clue to me that, man, I am on the right track. Now, here's where it becomes literal in terms of the name of the trail, Ladder Trail, because it actually has ladders on it. Didn't realize that. And I was really tired on these trails. But nevertheless, again, we move forward. So in terms of this, again, like I said, I didn't see a connection to the ladders in the story. So that's that. But next, we have rock in the middle of it all. And I'm going to make a jump because I believe the rock in the middle of it all refers to the end of this video. Now, the end of this video, we don't get all the way to the top of Dorr Mountain. Now, I did go to the top of Dorr Mountain, and I'll show you a picture here. Here's some of the images of the top of Dorr Mountain. I believe when he says the rock in the middle of it all, he's referring to the middle, somewhere between Dorr Mountain and the bottom of the trail. So the middle, and I believe is at where you're going to see at the end of the video what I'm talking about. Nevertheless, here's where it gets really confusing, to be honest, for me, because this is when he said he reversed course. Now, to reverse course is a big deal. Like, that means in my understanding, he went backwards, all right? He went back down, starting at the middle mark, all right? Went back down, and then he circled back. It didn't say 5 years old when the forest opened up. Again, there's lots of trees, and I think it's easy to see at the very bottom. That's more of a forest-like area, so that's why I checked that off. But I wasn't quite sure what he meant when he said he circled back. So it's like he did a reverse course. He said 5 years old when the forest opened up, and then he said he circled back. I couldn't figure out where it was, and he said we left the box not far from a place where locals turn up from time to time. So I wasn't sure where he turned up. It was really hard and difficult for me to determine that location. But nevertheless, that's what he said. And he also said we walked back towards where we'd begun. And I believe that meant at the beginning of the trail. And so now I do believe I found that connection with that photo and that spot that I found early on in the video. That's why I believe he went back down and kind of saw that area. And I just don't know quite how it all connects. Now here's a map of what it would look like to do that 14-day vacation in his early years if he actually included Maine. Now obviously this is a long trip. I don't know if this is the actual trip he took. I do believe it is. He does refer specifically to Maine in the chapter, saying 40 years earlier, and so I just believe that's where he meant along that route. So tell me what you think. Could this be possible? Could this be the route that he took? Let's talk. Along with that, and the map of the Dorr Mountain Trail, or at least the Canyon National Park, here's the beginning of the Dorr Mountain Trail. And when I say the end of the video, this is where I'm talking about, in the middle. Because if you get to the top of the mountain, which I showed you pictures of, and that is right here, that's Dorr Mountain, the top. Just beautiful view up there. I definitely suggest you go get to the top, at least to take some pictures. And then when you saw the rocks and the lily pads and the picture where I think he took a photo at the end of his day, or closer to the end of his day, that's what that is. All right. Now, you tell me, what do y'all think? How can we solve this together? I say together, not like you have to share anything with me. I'm just giving this away because I couldn't find it. Maybe you can. I believe this is definitely where he was, but I don't know exactly all the details, and I couldn't confirm all the details, but maybe you can. Maybe you can take from where I started and finish it off. I do believe this treasure needs to be found. I think it'll be amazing for somebody to find it. And maybe it could be you. Maybe you could find a treasure. I do believe the Pokemon box is somewhere along this path. I don't necessarily believe the Appalachian footpath box is there anymore, but if you still find it somewhere along that path in Carver's Gap, like I talked about in my previous video, please tell me, share. Let's find some treasure, y'all. And in an effort to be completely transparent, I'm going to do something that I was not planning on doing. I'm going to share what state I believe the lion's share box is in. The way I'm going to do that is sometime between this point and the end of this video, I'm going to either say or show you the name of the state. All right. So I'm going to do that. Only got about a little less than 7 minutes left in this video. So the last thing I want to talk about is friends. One of the things that happened to me along this journey of searching for this particular box was when I took a trip up to the Northeast. I actually ended up hanging out with some friends just as I knew I was coming through in order to go check out this trail, and I reached out to some friends and connected, and I realized something that I just didn't realize beforehand, and one of it is just based on this concept that I have, and it's not a quote that I originated, but it's a quote that I have used and I use several times, and it's this idea that I am just thankful for strangers who become friends and friends who become family. I'm sure you can think about some people in your life who may have been that for you, or maybe you can't, and there's definitely people who've betrayed you and hurt you. I don't have an explanation, but I will say I know that there are strangers who become friends and friends who become family. And I would encourage you to not seek them out. They really come reveal themselves, to be honest, over time. But there is someone who seeks us out, and I believe God calls us his own, his sheep, and his sheep know his voice. And if you had any time or any opportunity to get to know the one who created you for friendship, who created you for love, who created you for a journey, who hides treasure so that it can be found, that's the type of God that I serve. That's the type of God that I believe who created you and me. And he doesn't mind us seeking those things. Like, he puts certain desires in our hearts to seek him. Now, he doesn't put every desire in our heart, the heart is deceitful. And so it's not about trusting your heart, but I do believe it's about trusting a God who created you. And there is a God out there who created you for love. He created you for a journey. He created you for authenticity. He created you for an opportunity to reach and spend time with others and connect. And so I would just invite you to go for that journey, Don't ignore the call. Don't ignore the yearning. Don't ignore the opportunity, I know everyone doesn't believe in God, but he says, seek and you'll find. I believe if you search for answers, you'll find it, if you're looking for an answer on creation, if you're looking for an answer on life, I encourage you to seek. I encourage you to find that answer, It says it's the glory of God to conceal a matter, and it is the glory of kings to search it out. I believe each and every one of you who are searching for this treasure have the opportunity to search for greater treasure than this, treasure that lasts after death. And I believe that journey to seek and find that treasure is the glory of kings, is a glorious journey. And so I find it, I get excited about finding treasure. I get excited about sharing treasure with you all. I get excited about this, and I've never done this before in my life. And so I know I'm an amateur at this. I know I'm new. I know I'm probably breaking a lot of unwritten rules as a treasure hunter, but this is my journey, and I encourage, I'm excited to search with you all, and I just encourage you all to seek the treasure that no one can take away, that no one can steal. That's what the kingdom of God is. It's like treasure hidden in a field. And you may spend your entire life searching, but when you find that treasure, it's worth it, And I believe the treasure in the kingdom of heaven is eternal. I think there's eternal treasure that we should be seeking. I'm really enjoying searching for this physical treasure, this temporary treasure that Jon Collins-Black has hidden. But the eternal treasure, the eternal reward, that's what I know it's worth more than these days that I spent on this treasure, the hours that I spent on this video, the treasure in heaven. And just a reminder, the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field. When that man found that treasure, he sold everything he had because he knew he found something worth giving his life up for, because somebody laid their life down for him. All right. So my name is Stephen Weeks. I am the Christian treasure hunter, and the kingdom of heaven is like treasure hidden in a field.